In Brazil, the Minister and President of the Supreme Federal Court, Rosa Weber, delivers this Friday the federal constitution in indigenous language to the National Library of Rio de Janeiro. On Friday, Spanish police and customs announced the seizure of nearly 9.5 tons of cocaine from Ecuador in what they describe as the country's biggest ever haul of the drug. At least 13 people, including 7 children, were killed on Friday in a stampede at the Barea stadium in the Madagascar capital. Hello, welcome to From the South. Tamara Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Brazil, the ministers and president of the Supreme Federal Court, Rosa Weber, will deliver this Friday the federal constitution in the indigenous language to the National Library of Rio de Janeiro. With the support of 15 indigenous people from the Amazon regions, the 1988 constitution was translated in the Nguatu language 35 years after its promulgation. The official, Rosa Weber, will also sign a cooperation agreement subscribed between the library and the National Council of Justice, which includes the exchange of information, documents, and technical institutional support. In Ecuador, a national public hearing is held for the vote counting of the early 2023 presidential and legislative elections. The authorities of the National Electoral Council reported the reception of the respective minutes with the report corresponding to the vote counts of the early general elections 2023 of last August 20th. The organization plans to deal with the resolution of the special broad abroad, where it declared the nullity of the electronic votes, which, according to complaints of some voters, were unable to vote due to failures. The Supreme Court of Justice in El Salvador found former Minister of Security David Munguia guilty of charges of illicit enrichment. The former high official and his wife were sentenced to return more than $450,000 to the Salvadoran state after it was proven that the amount was earned by illicit means. On Friday, the county of Maui in Hawaii is suing the island's power companies for negligence in the wake of severe weather conditions that led to the deadliest U.S. wildfires in a century. The lawsuits allege that Maui Electric Company, Hawaii Electric Company, and 2 other companies were negligent in failing to shut down equipment despite a red alert issued by the National Weather Service. Grid firefighters were still battling a blaze in the country's northern region on Friday in what is considered the largest fire in the European Union. The body of a man was recovered on Thursday in the Barea Forest National Park near the Turkish border, bringing the total deaths to 21. Authorities suspect that the bodies could correspond to migrants who recently crossed into the countries from Turkey. Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin, regarding Japan's decision on the discharge of nuclear contaminated water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, states that Japan should remedy its selfish conduct of transferring the risk of nuclear contamination to the world at once.
To reiterate that Japan has clung obstinately to its way to discharge nuclear contaminated water into sea, flagrantly transferring the risk of nuclear contamination to the whole world. This is extremely selfish and irresponsible. The Japanese side should remedy its selfish conduct of transferring the risk of nuclear contamination to the world right away, so as not to turn the nuclear contaminated Fukushima water into shame for Japan. Regarding Japan's extremely selfish and irresponsible wrongdoing, I will also stress that China and other stakeholders have the rights and responsibility to take justified legitimate and necessary preventive measure to maintain the safety of marine environment, food safety, and people's health.
Authorities in the Indonesian province of Java declared a state of emergency due to the fire that has been raging for several days at a landfill site. The flames have been spreading since Tuesday at the Sharmukti landfill, where the wastes from the city of Bagdun and its 2.5 million inhabitants is pulled up. At least 30 firemen have struggled in the vains to contain the flames on the 25-hectare site, a task complicated by high temperatures and strong winds. Let's take our very first break, but remember you can now join us on our TikTok account teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back from the south. On Friday, Spanish police and customs announced the seizure of nearly 9.5 tons of cocaine from Ecuador in what they describe as the country's biggest ever haul of the drug. According to authorities, the seizure, which took place on Wednesday in the southern part of Algeciras, is the biggest hand-haul cargo of cocaine in Spain to date. The narcotic was stashed in banana crates inside a refrigerated container. They added the logos of more than 30 European criminal groups who had been designated to take the delivery of the cargo were found inside.
We are facing the largest seizure of cocaine in Spain. There are almost 9.5 tons, 9,436 kilos that have been seized, which have been intercepted in a refrigerated container from Ecuador. This container then, in the documentation that was presented before customs, based on the transport documents, it claimed to contain 1,080 boxes of bananas, and that the narcotic substance was found later.
It exceeds the 8,700 kilos that were also seized in Algeciras by the police in 2018, and would be the fourth or fifth largest drug seizure by police on record in Europe.
Russia's investigative committee spokesperson Svetlana Petronov reported that 10 bodies of the Wednesday's plane crash victims were found at the site of the accident. Petronov said that the molecular genetic analysis are being carried out to establish the bodies' identities, and the flight's recovers has been retrieved. The spokesperson also informed that an investigation is underway to thoroughly verified all the possible versions of what caused the crash.
Initial investigative work at the site of the plane crash, the bodies of 10 victims were found. In order to establish their identities, molecular genetic analyses are being carried out. The investigation recovered flight recorders. A thorough examination of the site of the accident is underway. Currently, objects and documentation of importance to establish all the circumstances of the plane crash are being collected. All the necessary judiciary expertise will be set up. The investigation will thoroughly verify all the possible versions of what happened.
Well, Russian President Alexander Lukashenko said that Wagner members will remain in its country after the presumed death of group's leader Yevgeny Prigozhin in a plane crash. The Belarusian president said that Wagner fighters who were offered exile in his country following a short life uprising led by the Prigozhin against Russia's military leadership have continued to gather in the countries and estimated their number to be around 10,000.
We have agreed upon with Prigozhin and Dima Utkin and other commanders that were present, we will fulfill that. So Wagner lives, Wagner has lived, and Wagner will live in Belarus, in spite of anyone's will against this. Back then, we had set up a system with Prigozhin on how Wagner would be hosted in Belarus.
The Indian Space Research Organization released on Friday the first images of the progress of the Chandrayaan-3 space missions on the surface of the moon. The images released corresponds to the space mission that published its first step of its rover after landing at the moon's south pole on Wednesday, August 23rd. The Indian Space Agency also released video of the Pryan rover on the moon, showing the distance of the rover from the Vikrant lander to begin its tour on the lunar surface. Let's take our last break, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to watch interviews, top stories, special broadcasts, and more. Hit the subscribe button and active the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For a final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. At least 13 people, including 7 children, were killed on Friday in an stampede at the Barea Stadium in Madagascar, on its capital. Red Cross reports indicate that at least 107 injured. The stampede occurred at the entrance to the Barea Stadium, where a crowd of around 50,000 spectators had arrived to attend the opening ceremony of the Indian Ocean Island Games. The cause of the tragedy was not immediately known, but Red Cross said the tool could climb. Madagascar's president, who was present at the opening ceremony, called for a minute's silence. TV images broadcast images of days and shocked people trying to locate their shoes split among the objects lost in the deadly crash.
We have an 18-year-old child, and we heard that there were 12 dead and over 80 injured. As we had no news of our child, we went to the morgue, but they told us that no child that age had died. So we went to the emergency room to see if he was among the injured.
We came to the hospital and found that my neighbor was dead. Now we are waiting for the papers so that the body can be taken out and we will bring it home. My nephew was injured, but he pulled through.
Friday, West Africans blocs ECOWAS told Nigeria's coup leaders it was not too late to reconsider their position as they blanked over a return to civilian rule with the option of military forces still very much on the table. With delegations leaning to main, ECOWAS says negotiations remains its priority, while defense chiefs prepares a standby mission for a possible legitimate use of force to restore democracy if it's needed.
Too late for the military authorities in Niger to reconsider their action and listen to the voice of reason, as the regional leaders will not condone coup d'etat. The real issue is the determination of the community to halt the spiral of coup d'etats in the region. Instruments include the use of force. So it is very much on the table, as are other measures that we are working on. But if peaceful means fail, ECOWAS cannot just folded hands.
On Friday, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel held a closed-door meeting with his Mozambican counterpart, Philippine UC, as part of a work agenda in the African country. At the meeting, the representatives of both nations ratified their willingness to consolidate bilateral relations, as well as to explain and diversify comprehensive binational cooperation through the sign of agreements. After the meeting, Díaz-Canel thanks the government and the people of Mozambique for the condemning the United States blockade against Cuba in different scenarios, such as in the United Nations General Assembly in the African Union. Angolan President João Lourenço met on Friday at the local presidency headquarters with his Brazilian counterpart Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who arrived on Thursday in Luanda, where he will make a 3-day state visit to Angola. The two head of states witnesses the signing of several agreements with emphasis on the defense sector, particularly Brazil's challenges for the protection of seas in times of peace.
Given that Angola and Brazil temporarily hold the presidency of SADC, I think it would be very important to prepare a high-level meeting between the two regional blocs to harmonize strong economic cooperation within the framework of our developments. Road rehabilitation and other extremely important projects have been paid for in full and on schedule.
For his part, the Brazilian president spoke of some agreements reached in the health sectors and also praised the work of the African mission on the road to peace.
In the health sector, we have addressed two important aspects. We have strengthened the prevention policy, which has given rise to the treatment logic we have now received, and the country's first drugs factory will be imported in a consortium of 3 Brazilian companies. The war in Ukraine. At a time of food insecurity in Africa, the mission of African leaders to Russia and Ukraine was a positive step towards peace.
On Friday, foreign poll observers said Zimbabwe's presidential and legislative elections failed to conform to the regional and international standards, placing in doubt the credibility of the 10th vote. Regional and international observers listed concern over the canning of the opposition rallies, denial of accreditations to several foreign media, missing voters' names from the roll at their polling stations, based states media, and voter intimidation among the issues that silenced the election.
Just means that the road to democracy can be very difficult, even for those sanctimonists who are in Washington. It's a challenge. We accept the challenge, we try our best. We are dismissive of the ramblings and mouthings of Nevas Mumba, who abuses his fiduciary role as the head of the Zimbabwe SADC Observer Mission and arrogates to himself a dictatorial mandate as a solo individual to say, I'm here to promote the interests of a fellow preacher. He's a preacher, I'm told. He probably used to come and compare the Bible notes with Chamisa, maybe. We can't be perfect, but there is definitely no ill will in our imperfections. There's no ill will in our imperfections.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook and Twitter at Anonyms and as well. For Telesur English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.